My fiancé screamed, "You'll never survive without me." I yelled back, "Watch me." That night, I left with nothing but my car. 6 months later, I drove past him, still living with his mom. I'm Tessa, 30 years old, female. And I left the man I thought I'd marry with nothing but my car and a full tank of spite. The night I left, I didn't even grab my toothbrush, just slammed the door behind me and drove into the dark like my soul was on fire. But let me back up. You need to understand who Nate was. Nate, 33, male, my fiancé of 4 years, was the kind of guy who made strangers think he was charming and friends wonder if they missed something. He was tall, loud in a room, good at parties, great with parents. But behind closed doors? Nate had a way of turning every disappointment into my fault. Lost his job? I wasn't supportive enough. Burned dinner? I was distracting him. Got drunk at his friend's bachelor party and crashed his car into a stop sign? I should have reminded him to take an Uber. That's how it always was, me being the glue and him pretending I was the crack. When we first met, I fell fast. He had that boyish grin, the one that made you feel chosen. I was 25, living in a tiny studio in Atlanta, working long shifts as a nurse. He'd pick me up with coffee in one hand and flowers in the other. Called me his girl like it was the highest honor. Said I made him want to be better. And I believed him. But it's like once I moved in, once we got engaged, once I said yes, he stopped trying. He'd lose his temper more, make snide comments in front of his friends. Tessa can't cook, but hey, she keeps the sheets warm. Little digs that hit deep. I told myself it was stress. He was unemployed for a while, then bouncing between jobs. I picked up doubles to cover rent. He said he'd handle the bills, but things kept bouncing. My savings bled out under the weight of his next big plans. Still, I stayed. Because love, right? Because sunk cost fallacy wrapped in diamond rings and what-ifs. But that night, he was pacing the living room, drunk on Jack and ego, screaming that I was ungrateful, that I'd be nothing without him. "You'll never survive without me," he shouted, red-faced, finger in my face. And I finally broke. I looked him dead in the eyes, every ounce of exhaustion evaporated, and said, "Watch me." Then I grabbed my keys, got in my beat-up Civic, and drove. No plan, no bags, just rage and adrenaline in the driver's seat. When I tell people I left with nothing, they imagine I mean clothes and furniture. No, I mean nothing. Not my favorite hoodie, not the necklace my dad gave me before he died, not the box of keepsakes I'd kept since childhood. All of it was still in that apartment with Nate. And leaving it behind? It hurt. But staying hurt worse. I parked in a Walmart lot that night because I didn't know where else to go. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands ached, staring at the glow of the store sign like it had answers. I didn't even cry. I was too stunned. I just kept hearing Nate's voice in my head, mocking, booming, "You'll never survive without me." Here's the thing about Nate. He wasn't always that monster. Or maybe he was, and I just ignored the early warnings. Our first fight should have told me. We were only dating 3 months when I caught him scrolling through his ex's Instagram late at night. I teased him about it, nothing serious, but he snapped, slammed his phone down, and accused me of snooping. Somehow, I ended up apologizing. He sulked for 2 days until I begged him to forgive me. Looking back, that was the pattern. He'd screw up, then twist it until I was the guilty one. His instability got worse after we got engaged. He wanted a huge wedding, one we couldn't afford. I was juggling 12-hour shifts at the hospital, saving for a down payment, and he was insisting we needed an open bar and a live band. Every time I hesitated, he'd sneer, "Guess you don't want this marriage as much as I do," but the real tipping point was money. My paycheck paid for rent, groceries, car insurance, everything. Nate always had some new business idea. One month it was crypto, the next it was flipping motorcycles he never actually fixed. He pawned his own Xbox once just to cover his tab at a bar. When I tried to talk about budgeting, he called me controlling, said I was trying to emasculate him. It wasn't just the money, though. He controlled in little ways, too. He'd get jealous if I wore scrubs that were too tight. He'd accuse me of flirting if I laughed too hard at a coworker's joke. If I wanted a night with my girlfriends, he'd blow up my phone until I left early. Then he'd wrap it all in fake sweetness the next morning. "I just love you too much, baby. I don't want to lose you." By the time he screamed those words at me, "You'll never survive without me," I wasn't scared of being alone. I was scared of staying. So I sat in that Walmart parking lot, hands shaking, and made the decision. I wasn't going back. Not for clothes, not for furniture, not for closure. Nate could keep the apartment. He could keep the ring. Hell, he could keep the couch I bought. I just needed to keep myself alive. And that was the start of my 6 months of rebuilding from scratch. Don't forget to subscribe. The morning after I left, my phone looked like it had been set on fire. 36 missed calls, dozens of texts from Nate that went from rage to begging to rage again. "Where the hell are you? You think you can just run? Baby, I'm sorry, come home, we'll fix this." Then, "You won't last a week without me. You'll come crawling back." I blocked his number. He switched to email. I blocked that too. Then he started messaging me from fake accounts. I'd be scrolling through Instagram, and there he was hiding behind some throwaway profile. "You're nothing without me." It was like he couldn't stand the silence, but the silence was all I had. I stayed in my car for the first few nights, showering at my hospital between shifts, pretending everything was normal. I kept telling myself it was temporary, but my bank account said otherwise. Rent, car payment, student loans, it all added up. Without Nate's contributions, as pitiful as they'd been, I was stretched thin. The worst moment? When I pulled into a gas station on day 4 and realized I had $28 left in my checking account. I filled the tank halfway and cried into the steering wheel, praying nobody noticed. That's when I called Claire, 31, female, my oldest friend since high school. We'd drifted in recent years because Nate hated her, said she was a bad influence, which was code for she saw right through him. I sat outside her apartment building for 10 minutes before dialing, heart pounding like I was about to confess a crime. She answered on the first ring. "Tessa? Are you okay?" The second I heard her voice, I broke. Ugly sobbing, can't catch my breath, broken. She didn't ask for details, just said, "Come upstairs." Claire gave me her couch, no questions asked. She made me grilled cheese and poured me cheap wine, and for the first time in years, I felt safe. She even helped me file a change of address the next morning. I didn't have much to forward, but it felt symbolic. Meanwhile, Nate wasn't taking the hint. He showed up at my hospital parking lot one night. I came off a 12-hour shift to find him leaning against my Civic, holding the engagement ring box. His face was blotchy, eyes red, the smell of whiskey thick around him. "Tessa," he slurred, "we're supposed to be together. You can't just leave me." My heart dropped. How had he even found me? My schedule wasn't public. Unless... I realized then he still had access to my location through the shared phone plan I'd stupidly let him set up. That night I canceled the plan, switched carriers, and bought a burner until I could figure things out. I wasn't playing cat and mouse with him anymore. But it scared me. Because if he could track me once, he could try again. And deep down, I knew. Nate wasn't going to let me go quietly. The night Nate showed up at my car wasn't the last time. It was the first. 2 days later, Claire's downstairs neighbor knocked on her door. "Hey, some guy's been sitting in his car across the street for hours, keeps looking up here." My stomach dropped before he even said the make. A black Dodge Charger. Nate's pride and joy. I peeked through the blinds. There he was, head ducked low, pretending to scroll his phone but glancing up every few seconds. Like a predator who thought he was invisible. Claire wanted to call the cops right away, but I begged her not to. I didn't want to escalate. I wasn't ready to make it official yet, because once you drag the law into it, there's no going back. Instead, we cranked the blinds shut and waited him out. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the pipes, every car on the street made me think Nate was outside. When my alarm went off at 5 a.m. for my hospital shift, I felt sick, running on fear and caffeine. The harassment ramped up too. Fake profiles sending me messages like, "Slut," "Ungrateful bitch." "You'll regret this." I knew it was him. The writing was pure Nate, rage disguised as confidence. Then came the real blow, my tires. I came out of the hospital one night to find my Civic sagging, all 4 slashed. A note tucked under the windshield wiper in his messy handwriting. "You think you can just run?" I don't remember calling Claire, but she swears I was sobbing so hard she could barely understand me. She drove across town at midnight to get me, while I stood there staring at the car like it was a body in a morgue. That Civic had carried me out of Nate's life and now it sat gutted in the parking lot. Symbolic, in the worst way. We filed the police report the next day. They were sympathetic but shrugged. No cameras, no proof, no action. The officer actually said, "If you didn't see him do it, there's not much we can do." I wanted to scream. Did I need to wait until Nate put his hands on me again before anyone cared? Claire sat me down after. "You can't keep living like this, Tess. He's not going to stop. You need to fight back." Fight back. The words lit something in me. Because up until then, I'd been in survival mode, reacting, hiding, patching the holes Nate punched through my life. But what if I didn't just hide? What if I made him regret every second he spent haunting me? That thought terrified me, but it also thrilled me. And it was the exact moment I realized I wasn't just going to escape Nate, I was going to destroy him. Don't forget to subscribe. Update 1. All right, y'all. First off, I cannot thank you enough. Reading all your messages, weird memes, and absolutely unhinged hot takes has been the weirdest kind of therapy. Some of you told me I was a legend for leaving. Some of you told me I was an idiot for not taking his stuff. I hear you. I've replayed that decision 1,000 times. A handful of you advised arson as a cathartic option. To the person who said, burn the house down. Tempting, not gonna lie. Iconic energy, but also no. I'm not that person. Also, arson is illegal, and one of you pointed out the excellent logistical issue that Nate's mom would probably cry harder than he would. Point taken. Practical stuff I did after the last post because people asked and because silence felt dangerous. I documented everything. Pictures of the slashed tires, screenshots of the throwaway accounts and messages, copies of the police report, and a log with dates and times of every time he showed up or someone reported a suspicious car. Claire set up a cheap doorbell cam on her stoop that points down the street. Not to film him getting dramatic, but so I'd have something concrete if he tried stunts again. A neighbor actually gave us a clip of a black Charger idling across the block the night before the tire incident. It's grainy, but it's something. You DM'd me like crazy. Sweet DMs offering cash, move in with me, offers, adorable, and a very serious number of people who were like, get a restraining order. I started that process. It's messy, and the legal channels move slower than my rage, but it's in motion. Someone also recommended a women's shelter resource for temporary help if things go nuclear. Filed that away just in case. Then there were the comments that hurt. Why didn't you leave sooner? And were you really surprised? I won't lie, those cut. They made me sit with every excuse I used to explain him away. Love, hope, the idea that people change. Those comments forced me to confront my complicity, which sucked but was necessary. Best absurd comment. Pro tip, name his dog after your ex and then steal it. Whoever you are, stop whispering into the void and get a hobby. I loved the creativity, though. Most of all, thank you for the brutal encouragement. Some of you told me to make him uncomfortable in public, some said expose him at work, some said quietly ruin his rep. All of you made me think bigger than surviving. I'm not ready to tell the whole plan yet because plans leak and he watches. But I will say this, I'm done hiding. I'll be back with what I actually did next. And yes, it involves tastefully orchestrated humiliation that costs nothing but ingenuity. Stay savage and keep the receipts for me. The weeks after Nate slashed my tires were like living with a shadow stitched to my back. I'd come home from work, glance at the street, and my chest would seize if I saw any car that even vaguely resembled his black Charger. Claire started leaving the porch light on all night, like it was a talisman. She'd joke about it. If he's gonna stalk us, at least let him see our good side. But I could hear the edge in her voice. One night, I heard gravel crunch outside. I peeked through the blinds and nearly choked on my own breath. Nate was standing at the curb, shirtless, swaying like he was drunk, holding a crumpled photo of us from our engagement party. He tore it in half and let the pieces scatter on the road before stumbling back to his car. My legs went jelly. I wanted to scream, but the silence was heavier. Claire put a hand on my shoulder, whispering, "Don't give him the reaction he wants." That was the moment I realized something. Nate thrived on spectacle. Screaming matches, dramatic exits, broken things, it all fed him. If I was going to claw my peace back, I couldn't just hide. I had to turn the stage lights on him for once. I started small, social media. I unblocked him, not to talk, but so he'd see me living. Smiling selfies with Claire, late-night karaoke videos, me in new clothes, laughing harder than I ever had with him. I knew it would gnaw at him, the idea that I was thriving without his shadow looming over me. Sure enough, 2 days later, he messaged from yet another fake account. "Stop pretending. You're nothing without me." I didn't reply. Just posted a clip of me and Claire dancing in the kitchen, our hair a mess, music blasting. Then came my favorite move. I remembered all the times he bragged about being the man of the house while secretly living off his mom. So I wrote a long, heartfelt post, not naming him directly, about how I'd escaped an engagement with a man who screamed I'd never survive on my own, but couldn't even pay rent without his mommy. It blew up. Friends commented, people shared it, some even DM'd me their own survival stories. A mutual acquaintance must have shown him because a week later, I got word he'd had a meltdown at a bar, screaming that I'd ruined his reputation. Good. That was just step one. Because I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I wanted the world to see him exactly how I'd always seen him. Pathetic, unhinged, clinging to control he never really had. And I already knew the perfect place to pull the curtain back on his little act. The universe handed me the opportunity for revenge on a silver platter. Or, more accurately, a Facebook invite. Scrolling late one night, I saw it. Nate's 34th birthday bash, hosted by Linda. Linda being his mother. The same house he'd retreated to after I left. The same house he once swore he'd never move back into because he was too much of a man to need mommy. The invite wasn't private. Rookie mistake. Anyone could see it, anyone could RSVP. And the caption? "Come celebrate my wonderful son Nate," with about 12 emojis. I laughed so hard I nearly woke Claire. Because here was Nate, screaming that I'd never survive without him, while his mom was throwing him a pity party in her living room. I didn't need to crash the party myself. That would have given him fuel. Instead, I reached out to a couple of mutuals, people who'd witnessed his tantrums before, who always rolled their eyes when he bragged. I told them the truth, about the screaming, the stalking, the slashed tires, the fake accounts. I didn't embellish, just laid it out raw. Word spread fast, and apparently it spread right into that birthday party. Because the next day, I got a video. Someone had filmed Nate drunk off his ass, trying to make a speech. He raised his glass, slurring, "To all the fake friends who believe my psycho ex," and then he tripped over the rug, face planted into the cake, and sent frosting flying across his mom's freshly vacuumed carpet. The camera shook with laughter. You could hear someone yell, "Guess she's better off without you, bro." The video blew up in our friend group chat. By morning, it was circulating on Instagram stories. Nate, covered in cake, flailing like a toddler mid-tantrum. And here's the thing. He couldn't spin it. Not this time. He tried calling me out on one of his burner accounts. "You ruined my life, bitch." But it just made him look worse. Because the more he raged, the more people remembered stories they'd buried about his blow-ups, his freeloading, his lies. My DMs filled with messages from women I didn't even know, telling me they'd gone through the same with guys like him, thanking me for not staying quiet. That was the sweet part of revenge. It wasn't just me anymore. The narrative had shifted. Nate wasn't the loud, confident life of the party. He was the clown. Still, humiliation is one thing. I wanted closure, something personal, something that would cut so deep he couldn't patch it over with booze or bravado. And the idea came from the most unexpected place. His mother. Because Linda reached out to me. Her message was short, awkward. "I'm sorry for everything my son put you through. He needs help, but he won't listen to me. Just thought you should know." I stared at that message for a long time, and then it clicked. How to finish this, once and for all. Update 2. Okay, y'all. I wasn't even going to post again, but after what went down, I need to. And honestly, you deserve the ending after riding this roller coaster with me. First, let me just say, the amount of DMs I got after the last update was wild. Some of you crowned me the patron saint of ex-fiancé humiliation. One guy sent me a literal PowerPoint titled Alternative Revenge Tactics, ranked by petty factor. I didn't use any of them, but 10-10 for effort. A surprising number of you also said Mary Claire, which made her laugh so hard she almost choked on her wine. She told me to tell you she accepts proposals in the form of tacos. But let's get to the meat of it. Remember how I mentioned Nate's mom, Linda, messaged me? That cracked the door open in a way I didn't expect. Linda's no saint. She enabled a lot of Nate's behavior, but you could tell she was exhausted. Her exact words were, "I don't even recognize my son anymore." And that's when the idea hit me. I didn't need to scream louder than Nate. I just needed to let his own life speak for itself. So I wrote a letter, not a rant, not a hit piece, just the truth. Every ugly detail, the manipulation, the screaming, the slashed tires, the stalking. I ended it with the line, "He told me I'd never survive without him. But I did, and I'm better for it." Then I printed copies. Linda got one. His aunt, who always posts Bible quotes on Facebook, got one. His boss at the part-time job he barely held on to got one. And, because poetic justice demands an audience, I slipped one into the mailbox of the local bar where he liked to play the big shot. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. Everyone knew who it was from. The fallout was glorious. People stopped answering his calls. His boss cut his hours after customers started whispering about the guy who harasses women. Even his drinking buddies pulled back. Nobody likes being seen as the sidekick of a walking embarrassment. And Linda, she actually called me. She said, "I don't condone what you did, but maybe it's what he needed. He's been sulking in his room for days." I thanked her and hung up, feeling lighter than I had in years. Then last week, the cherry on top, I drove past his mom's house on my way to a shift. And there he was, Nate, sitting on the porch in sweatpants, cigarette dangling, looking like a ghost of the man who once screamed in my face that I'd never survive without him. Except now, I knew the truth. I survived, I thrived, and he's still exactly where I left him. Small, angry, and stuck. Some of you told me revenge wouldn't heal me. Maybe you're right. But closure doesn't always come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from watching the person who tried to break you choke on their own words. And I'll be honest, when I saw him sitting there, I actually smiled, because I finally believed myself when I said it. Watch me. The weeks after sending those letters were the strangest mix of peace and paranoia. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the next explosion. No more slashed tires. No more fake accounts pinging at 3 a.m. No Nate lurking at the edge of the parking lot, just silence. And silence, I learned, is its own adjustment. When you live with chaos long enough, you mistake it for love. I'd wake up some mornings expecting a fight, the way some people expect coffee. My body braced for his voice, his anger, his control. But there was nothing. Just birds outside Claire's window, the hum of the fridge, the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. That's when I started actually living again. I took extra shifts, not because I was scrambling for money, but because I wanted to. I saved up enough for a little one-bedroom apartment, tiny, but mine. The first night I slept there, mattress on the floor, I cried harder than I ever did when Nate screamed at me. Because it hit me. I had done it. I had survived without him. Claire came over the next morning with a potted plant. "For good energy," she said, placing it by the window. We sat on the floor with bagels and coffee, and she looked at me the way you look at someone who's finally come up for air. "You're different," she said. "Lighter." And she was right. I started noticing little things. How good it felt to buy my own groceries without hearing Nate complain about the boring stuff I chose. How I could play whatever music I wanted in my car without him rolling his eyes. How laughter didn't feel like a negotiation anymore. Every piece of independence felt like revenge in itself. Still, I won't lie. Sometimes I'd picture him. Wonder if he was still watching, still seething. Sometimes guilt would creep in, whispering that maybe I went too far with the letters. But then I'd remember the look on his face that night in our apartment. The rage, the spit flying from his mouth as he screamed that I'd never survive without him. And guilt turned to fuel. One evening, driving home from a late shift, I stopped at a red light and caught my reflection in the rear view. Hair messy, eyes tired, scrubs wrinkled, but there was a smile on my face, a real one. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just survival anymore. This was freedom. I thought about us, all the readers who told me to keep receipts, to fight back, to not let him own my narrative. And I felt this wild surge of gratitude. Because you were right. I wasn't a victim anymore. And soon, I'd get the moment I didn't even know I was waiting for. The proof, undeniable, that I'd won. It happened on a Saturday, 6 months to the day after I left. I wasn't planning it. I wasn't chasing ghosts. I was just running errands after a brutal night shift, radio low, window cracked to let in the September air. And then I turned down Maple Street. I hadn't meant to. My GPS rerouted me around construction, and suddenly I was rolling past a house I hadn't seen in years. Nate's mom's. The curtains were the same yellow lace. The lawn was still patchy, like no one cared enough to fix it. And there he was, Nate. Slouched on the porch steps in sweatpants, cigarette dangling from his lips, phone glowing in his hand. He looked older somehow, not 33, 43, bloated from booze, eyes glassy, hair unkempt. The Charger sat in the driveway, dusty, one headlight busted. He hadn't changed a thing. For a second, time collapsed. I was back in that apartment, his voice roaring in my face. "You'll never survive without me!" My hands gripped the steering wheel like I was about to slam on the brakes, but I didn't stop. I slowed just enough to look. He glanced up, recognition flickering. His mouth opened like he wanted to shout something. But no sound came. Just a flicker of shame, or maybe rage, or both. And me? I smiled. Not smug, not mocking, just peaceful. Because in that moment I saw the truth written across the sagging porch and the ashtray at his feet. He was still stuck in the wreckage of his own making. And I was free. I pressed the gas, let the car glide forward, and didn't look back. My little apartment, my job, my messy joy with Claire waiting on the other side of town, that was my future. Nate was just a chapter I'd already closed. As I merged onto the highway, the sun broke through the clouds. Warm light filled the car and I laughed, out loud. Because I realized he was wrong. So wrong. I didn't just survive without him. I lived, and for the first time in years, I believed it fully. Watch me.